Hi everyone, good morning.
Good
My name is
morning.
Nabeel Akbar, and I'm here today to talk a little bit on pricing for today's Edu slot. Thank you all for coming for today's huddle. So let's get right into it. What's the main point that sells the property today? It's price, right? After all the other factors and points that comes to the property, it is price that sells the property. But in our local market, how do the owners set their price? How do they set their price? It's basically they put a little bit for they get the price of the property, and on top of that they add on for their fixed deposit on monthly income and then future expenditures, and that becomes their property price, right? So when that becomes a property price and when they bring it down to the market, you know, the for sale sign that you put in front of the property, that for sale sign grows roots underneath because it's there for a long time and it's overpriced, right? So getting into pricing, let's break it down to what we have to identify first. There are a few factors. Before identifying the factors that affect the price, we have to know what conditions affect the price, because there are certain types of markets. 3 types to be specific. One is the buyer's market, next a balanced market, and then you have a seller's market. So if I am to say about the buyer's market is mainly where the buyers are in control. There are high number of properties but less buyers, so the buyers set the price, right? Then if you go to a balanced market is there are equal number of properties to sell and there are equal number of buyers for those properties. There might be about 4 properties to 6 buyers, or 4 buyers to about 6 properties. Moving forward, we have the seller's market. So in the seller's market, the sellers set the price. Very few sellers, high demand in the area, more number of buyers. People want to put their money in and buy more properties, but very few sellers in that particular location. So the sellers set the price. Sri Lanka, majority, it's a buyer's market, right? Hopefully we can move into, maybe in the suburbs it's becoming more of a seller's market where there's more demand to move towards the suburbs. Okay, so we're identifying those areas here in Sri Lanka. Okay, now that we have spoken about the market conditions, market factors, let's move towards identifying the factors that affect the price after you've identified what market it is. And to do this, we do a simple report called a comparative market analysis, CMA. What we're doing here is we're basically identifying apples with apples, comparing the subject property with another property in the same location. Now you can identify properties that are in that location, but you've set the price, but a person might still think, for this price, I can go to another place and buy a property here in Sri Lanka. Unfortunately, we don't have an MLS system, a multiple listing service in Sri Lanka, so we have to do most of the groundwork. Get into the location. After you have identified the property, after you have gotten down all the factors in all the checklists of that property, you've got all the factors down, then you go into the market and find out what are the other properties in the area that are similar to this property and how are you going to compare them. What's that price going for? Maybe you can take a few calls to people in the area. It can be people who have sold properties or even other agents who have sold properties, and identify from them, what did this house go for? What was the price it was sold for? And what was the listing price and how much did you actually sell it for? You identify the percentage. So people are bargaining at that percentage. So coming back to identifying the factors of the property, what are they? 2 areas of a property. You have land and you have building. Land, what you're looking at is the location, the size, how many purchase. You're looking at the shape of the land and access. How do you access this? property. When you compare it with other properties, you are looking at comparables within a range of 1 to 1.5 kilometers within that radius. So what you're doing is you're identifying what radius you are in. You're identifying the radius of properties in that area, and then getting those properties, comparing them likes with likes. After that, you're also looking at, fine, if a person is coming to, say for example, in Battaramulla only, and if he has this much money, you want to give him the competitive advantage of that property. Right? You don't want, you can really be a master of that area and say, look, you can take this money and you can even go to that area, but that area is expensive for you, for this much. And for this much, you're getting a really good property with all these amenities. This is the location, the size, all of that. That is in terms of the land. Now moving on towards the building. All right, there are two factors, like I said. One is the building, one is the land, and then the building. Now building, what you're going to identify is floor space, how many square foot of floor area, the age of the property, how old is the building. Sometimes if it is too old, we have an understanding that, okay, if it is of a certain age limit, then this property is old, and we do not take that into the value of the property, of the land, the total property selling price. We take the age, then we look at the amenities of the properties. What are the amenities and features of those properties? What's around it and what the property has to offer. It can be a modern house, or it can just be a very standard house. Right? So then we identify what are the construction prices today, basic standard construction prices today, that goes at about 5,500 rupees, 5,000 rupees per square foot. Standard. The luxury, it can vary. Then it goes to 6,000, 6,800, 7,000, it varies. Right? So for this, you would also, one suggestion, one tip is, if you get a property, try and get connected to the contractors, to the construction people who built the property, so that you identify more about what are the what construction, what materials, how it is that was taken to build this property, and therefore you are able to better explain the property when selling it. Right? So this is just tips on when selling it, compared tagging it with the price. After that, you're looking at the condition of the property. Sometimes conditions of the property, some people have built completely, it's finished, and therefore it gets a good value, good sale price. But if the property is half built, it might be even 80%, it still affects the buyers when they come to see the property. When they look here in Sri Lanka, mainly when they see a property that is incomplete, the value of it goes down. You can't put a value to an incomplete building, right? Takes down the curb appeal completely. So either the landlord in these areas, you can advise the landlord to finish it up and then sell the property, or for that matter, then you will have to identify with a proper valuation and get that value, so that you can get the valuation proof to your buyers to sell the property. So for a small area, that I'll say is on the age of the property, that is the depreciation that affects the property, like I said earlier. If it is of a certain age limit, then what you're doing is you're going to depreciate that property down, and afterwards, if the property is of 10 years, okay, there's a depreciable amount. I'm sure that we have sample CMAs, we have sample CMAs that you can go through and see how we take the age factor into depreciation to calculate the depreciation amount of the value of the property. And finally, you add up the total building value and the land per perch value in the area, and you come to the price, the total price, sellable price of the property, according to the market, because the market dictates the price, not the owners. If there are any comments, any questions, afterwards we'll take them up. And of course, to the video, leave a comment, leave a like, and get in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Nabeel.